brother earlier today, saying that the president's health, he believes, was a factor in his decision. But just a short time ago, I heard from a source close to the Biden family, and they said that Frank Biden, the president's younger brother, is an alcoholic, that he hasn't spoken to the president in weeks, and that the president's health had nothing to do with his decision to leave the race.
Nancy Cordes at the White House with that information. Nancy, thank you. Congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is here with us as well. And shortly after President Biden endorsed his vice president, we heard from a number of prominent Democrats. Scott, is the Democratic Party coalescing behind Kamala Harris?
A big chunk already has. She picked up a block of Senate endorsements and picked them up quickly, nearly 24 by our CBS News count. And it's some of the lions of the U.S. Senate. Patty Murray, third in the line of presidential succession. She chairs the Appropriations Committee. Mark Warner of Virginia chairs the Intelligence Committee. Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has her finger on the pulse of the progressive wing of the caucus. And then all the House groups, Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, and from some of the other names we've heard associated with potential candidacies, including Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. And there on the screen, some of those members of the House January 6th committee who spent so much time investigating 2020 and the efforts of Donald Trump to overturn the election. And if this all sounds familiar, this broad base of voices in the Democratic Party, it was a broad base of voices in the Democratic Party calling on President Biden to withdraw. This, in a way, has unified an often fractious Democratic caucus.
So much has changed in just a short period of time. Scott MacFarlane, thank you so much. Want to bring in John Dickerson, who joins us now. And John, it's hard to overstate what a seismic event this is. How does this change the contours of this presidential race?
Oof. Well, we're still figuring that all out, Nora. I mean, one of the ways is, first, the Democratic Party has to figure out how to get unified. They have to go through that series of issues. And we've been talking about the timeline. You mentioned LBJ. You know, when Johnson dropped out in 1968, he wasn't essentially the party nominee. I mean, Joe Biden is the nominee, which means the entire Democratic process made him the party nominee. To unwind that means taking care of some sensitivities and bruised feelings that might be out there as a way to get the party unified to then go forward. So the first big task is staying unified, and the second is figuring out how to take the fight to Donald Trump. Democrats are terrified that basically since the first debate, the only debate, 27th of June, they've been losing ground to Donald Trump, not able to take the case to him. The Republicans just emerged from their convention highly unified. When can the Democratic ticket form itself, which means, of course, that crucial vice presidential decision, but then when can it start prosecuting the case against Donald Trump, which it has not been able to do basically since the end of June?
John Dickerson, thank you. Want to bring in Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. And Margaret, if Kamala Harris secures the Democratic nomination, she would be the first woman of color to become a major party presidential nominee. How does this change the substance of this race, the discussion of the issues that are before the American people?
Well, Democrats have argued that they have the policy position to win, even if they didn't have the energy and the unity. Well, now they can try to bring all together, and with Kamala Harris as vice president, put reproductive health care as the top issue that she has been the messenger on for Joe Biden, who is not comfortable messaging around that because of his personal beliefs about abortion. He's made that clear. She will put that at the fore and be able to talk about it in a compelling way against a candidate who celebrates having put justices on the court who overturned Roe versus Wade, even though Donald Trump's current position is that he sent it back to the states. She will bring that front and center. She can also help to perhaps get a second look for some Democrats in key states like Michigan, where there had been concern in particular about the president's perceived lack of empathy in terms of the loss of Palestinian life. We've seen in our CBS polling that this extends beyond Arab and Muslim voters. It was very resonant with black voters in particular. And she has been able to have a softer message, a more humanitarian message on that front. That would also be front and center. By the way, she's also 59 years old. So in that conversation about generational change, she can say she is that. There are a lot of negatives that you will hear some of her critics outlay in the next few days, including some people who may want to challenge her in the coming days. But that's the case that Democrats hope will be a winning one, that she can lean into those more progressive platform issues for the party.
And Margaret, we are just hearing from Jill Biden's spokesperson that she was supportive, whatever road he chose, that she's always been his biggest believer, champion, and always on his side. And there's some 50 years together. But this is obviously painful for the entire Biden family.
It has to be. And we've seen messages, including from Hunter Biden, President Biden's surviving son, who has been very much in a harsh spotlight because of his legal troubles. Remember his case that just in the month of June, one of the issues that had to have weighed on Joe Biden as a father to see his son convicted in regard to gun charges, who also faces charges in September. Those don't all go away, but perhaps the shifting here and the conversations with the family, all of that has to have weighed on him. And it is interesting as he puts really front and center his family so often, 50-year spouse, saying she stood by him.
Margaret Brennan, thank you. I want to bring in Robert Costa. And Robert, a lot of the discussion is about Joe Biden and his legacy, protecting that legacy. That's in part, I think, why he chose not to seek re-election. He is throwing his weight behind his Vice President, Kamala Harris. But is it clear tonight that she has the nomination? Who else may jump in?
We're looking at a Democratic Party that's convulsing tonight. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who just registered as an independent, a longtime centrist Democrat. CBS News has now learned he is considering re-registering as a member of the Democratic Party to consider standing for the Democratic presidential nomination, in effect challenging Vice President Harris for that nomination. He has not made a final decision based on our conversations with people close to him, but he is considering it tonight. He's talking to donors. He's talking to party officials. His consideration underscores how some Democrats are nervous about Vice President Harris's ability to beat former President Donald Trump, who I just spoke with about an hour or two ago. He told CBS News that he's prepared to have a political onslaught against Vice President Harris or whomever emerges as the nominee. I asked him, are you ready to debate Vice President Harris? He says, not at all, because I'm not even sure I'm going to be running against her. Let's see what happens.
And Nora, just to give you a sense of how fast-moving this is, Senator Joe Manchin was on Face the Nation at 10:30 this morning and said, it's time for a new generation, forget about me. Between 10:30 a.m. this morning and right now, there is a reconsideration.
That's like a month ago in politics, Margaret.
That's right. Well, so much has changed just today. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang, because she is outside the vice president's residence. And Weijia, what do we know about what the vice president is doing at this hour?
Well, Nora, we know that she is in Washington, D.C., of course, but we have not seen her in public at all today. She spoke with President Biden earlier when he called her before he made the big announcement. They had a private conversation, and then she spent the day reaching out to members of Congress, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. And, of course, we just saw in the past week how powerful these congressional leaders can be, and she certainly knows that, having served in the Senate. So she made immediate direct outreach to them to try to shore up support. And, you know, she has been talking to advisors, too, to try to process all of this and to try to answer the million-dollar question that everybody wants to know, which is, who is she going to pick as a running mate? And, you know, that question is really, who can bring something to the ticket that she cannot? Who can bring what Joe Biden could? Of course, there's huge overlap there. And who can offer something to those voters in the critical battleground states that will likely determine this race? And so there have been many names that have already emerged, Nora, including Democratic governors of Roy Cooper of North Carolina. We should point out that they just stumped together on the trail in Fayetteville, North Carolina this past week. Andy Beshear of Kentucky, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who she also spoke with today, according to an aide. But she could also pick somebody in the Biden cabinet, because she is not only running on her personal record, she is running on the record of the Biden-Harris administration. So if you were to choose a secretary, Pete Buttigieg, Gina Raimondo, these are people who have already been out spending the better part of the past year campaigning for President Biden. And so today, the team says there's no timeline, no discussions in public about when she might choose. But of course, Nora, we know it has to be soon.
Weijia Jiang, outside the vice president's residence, thank you very much. I want to bring in Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You said the clock was ticking for President Biden to reassure voters. Your reaction tonight to what has happened?
Well, this is an extraordinary moment. It's a moment where we are watching a true American patriot, somebody that has given his entire life to this country, make an incredibly selfless decision. He knows that the #1 priority is beating Donald Trump, and Joe Biden made the decision tonight that Kamala Harris has the best chance of being able to rescue our democracy from potential doom if Donald Trump becomes president. It's a hard decision for President Biden. Why? Because arguably he's the most successful president of our lifetime, rescuing this country from the pandemic, passing legislation that nobody thought was possible until Joe Biden was president, the biggest infrastructure investment in the country's history, the first gun bill of any consequence in 30 years. Inarguably, he has had a really remarkable record of legislative success. And so to walk away from that is very, very difficult. But there were and are a lot of voters who were looking for the torch to be passed to a new generation. I think they're going to be very excited by Kamala Harris, somebody that I've served with, somebody who I am eager and enthusiastic to support. And I think it's remarkable tonight that you have seen such a rush of support to her just hours after this announcement, which, by the way, was not previewed to any members of the Senate or governors. You saw this organic growth of support for her. I think, as you mentioned, about half of my colleagues in the Senate have already endorsed her. That didn't come through any coordinated effort. That came because we just all know her, and we think that she's going to be a tremendous commander-in-chief.
So, Senator, you believe that the Democratic Party is coalescing behind the vice president, and she will not face any significant challenge?
Well, it's too early to know whether there will be any challenge to her, but I see right now a pretty remarkable building of support for the vice president. She is ready to do this job. She has been side by side with President Biden, a big part of his successes. I've traveled with her around the world. I've seen how she has helped reshape America's image around the world in the wake of the destruction that was done to it by Donald Trump. So I'm pretty confident tonight that she's going to be our nominee. I think we would be better off as a party if we were able to get behind her. But obviously, it's early moments, so time will tell if she's the only candidate.
Senator, how do you hope that Vice President Harris will prosecute the case against Donald Trump?
Well, she is a prosecutor. And so this is a pretty clear contrast. A prosecutor running against a felon. Kamala Harris, who as California's Attorney General and Senator and Vice President has stood up to the big banks in the billionaire class. Donald Trump, who promises in his second term to give another massive tax break to those same people. Kamala Harris, who's spent her career trying to bring people together, trying to heal divisions. Donald Trump, who's continuing to divide us. I think she is going to be an incredibly effective messenger. I think even during this very tough time, these last few weeks when people were watching her more carefully than ever, she was at her best. And so I think that tells you that when the moment comes, when the stakes get the highest, Kamala Harris is at her best. I think this country is going to be really interested, I think really surprised at the Kamala Harris that they're going to meet over the course of the next several weeks and months.
Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ahead, a closer look at President Biden's storied career in politics and the legacy he'll leave behind.
You know where wood for your home comes from, but did you know your water likely comes from the same place? Whether you live in a big city or a small town, whether your water comes from a reservoir, a river, or a well, for most of us, it depends on a forest, perhaps hundreds of miles away. 180 million Americans have clean and healthy drinking water because of a miraculous natural process that captures snow and rain, replenishes rivers during dry times, stops erosion runoff, and keeps our water pure. But our forests are being devastated by disease and fire. The Arbor Day Foundation asks for your help in replanting our national forests for breathtaking beauty, homes for wildlife, clean air, and because clean water tomorrow depends on planting trees today. Visit arborday.org. See what we're doing. See how you can help.
Parenting is hard. Technology can make it harder. The family media plan developed by the American Academy of Pediatrics helps make it easier. Go to healthychildren.org/media plan today to create the media plan that's right for your family.
James Brown and Bill Cowher welcoming you back to Dennis Melvin's house. It's time for the Midnight Snack Run.
This is one tricky obstacle course. Sticking to healthy habits in this kitchen is going to take focus and determination.
He's already entered the snack part of the course, and he's eyeballing a jar of chocolatey candy.
That is tempting right off the start.
He's reaching, Bill, but he pushes it away.
Great stiff arm.
He's approaching a plate of delicious-looking iced cookies.
Oh, Dennis, you only want one of those.
He blows right by him for the apple.
The fridge, it's make or break time, JB.
He stares down some rich-looking treats. Uh-oh, looks like he's headed for the soda. Wait, he jukes left, grabs the water bottle, and shuts the door with his elbow.
I gotta see that again.
Great move.
Now he's just gotta get out of there.
Look what dropped from the sky.
Don't do it, Dennis.
Bill, he somehow keeps moving.
That's the way you execute a midnight snack run.
Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer.
Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Here they are.
That was easy, see?
Seriously?
Hands out, please. Oh, hold on.
There are some places where devices just don't belong. Device-free dinner, a common sense idea from Common Sense Media.
For the millions suffering from long COVID, there is one urgent question.
How long?
How long? How long?
Until we solve long COVID. The Solve Long COVID initiative is bringing people together to find answers now. Go to solvelongcovid.org to learn more.
Your age makes the choice of your vice president all the more important. Why do you think Senator Harris would be ready to step in and become commander-in-chief if something were to happen to you?
Number one, her values. Number two, she is smart as a devil. Number three, she has a backbone like a ramrod. Number four, she is really principled. And number five, she has had significant experience in the largest state in the union, running the Justice Department. It's only second in size to the United States Justice Department. And, obviously, I hope that never becomes a question.
That was from my 60 Minutes interview with then-candidate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2020, laying out why he says Harris was the right choice for VP. Biden's career goes back more than 50 years to 1972 when he was elected as one of the youngest senators. CBS's Major Garrett has a look back.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
Joe Biden's presidency began on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, where only days before, America bore witness to insurrection.
We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities.
The day before he was inaugurated, Biden marked 400,000 U.S. COVID-19 deaths. Less than 5 weeks later, he mourned 500,000 American casualties.
That's more lives lost to this virus than any other nation on earth.
Biden's gesture illustrated an unadorned empathy that flowed through his entire political life, an emotive approach that seemed to fit a fitful time.
To heal, we must remember. It's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal.
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was born in 1942. When the economy collapsed in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and his father lost his job, the Bidens moved to Delaware.
My dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up.
Biden played football at the University of Delaware and attended law school at Syracuse University. By 1972,
if you like what you see, help me out. If not, vote for the other fellow.
He was elected to the United States Senate as a long shot, tell it like it is 29-year-old.
I think one of the reasons I won is they have more confidence in me than with other people that I will say what I think.
Weeks later, his wife Nelia and their daughter were killed in a traffic accident that also injured sons Beau and Hunter.
I felt like a piece of me died.
Biden took the oath of office in a hospital. A single-father senator, Biden commuted from Wilmington to Washington aboard Amtrak to be home with his kids at night. He met Jill Jacobs, a teacher, on a blind date in 1975. They married 2 years later.
Everyone knows I love her more than she loves me. My name is Joe Biden. I want to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
He ran for president in 1987, but dropped out after being accused of plagiarism. A year later, he suffered 2 brain aneurysms, but would later write he had no fear of dying.
Judge Thomas.
Biden chaired the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation hearing in 1991, and during the 2020 campaign, he apologized to Anita Hill, who accused Thomas of sexual harassment but faced scrutiny and hostility.
To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved.
He drafted the 1994 crime bill. It pushed crime down, but incarceration rates up.
Hi, Penny. I'm Joe Biden, running for president.
His 2008 White House campaign went nowhere.
The vast majority of the people in Iowa haven't made up their mind yet.
When they did,
Joe Biden!
Barack Obama named Biden his running mate. In the White House, Biden oversaw stimulus spending and jumped ahead of the president by endorsing gay marriage.
And what this is all about is a simple proposition. Who do you love?
Biden told President Obama to wait for better confirmation before launching the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Memorably, he said this about the passage of Obamacare. Biden was known for verbal gaffes, some innocent.
We choose truth over facts.
Others less so.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
Biden passed on another run for the presidency in 2016 after his son Beau died of brain cancer. In 2020, he finished 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire, but bounced back to win South Carolina.
So all those who have been knocked down, counted out, left behind, let me say to you, this is your campaign.
For months, as the pandemic worsened, Biden stumped virtually from his basement.
This is a war against this virus.
Now let me introduce to you.
Biden made history by picking California Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, the first woman of color nominated by a major party.
Kamala knows how to govern. She knows how to make the hard calls. She's ready to do this job on day one.
That November, Biden defeated President Trump by 7 million votes, and he brushed aside Mr. Trump's false claims of fraud and prepared to bring the pandemic to heel. In his first 100 days, Mr. Biden accelerated vaccine distribution and strong-armed a $2 trillion COVID relief plan through a Congress with slender Democratic majorities. Mr. Biden, the first pre-baby boom president since 1993, approached the nation as a soft-spoken healer, but governed more progressively even than President Obama. A career politician soaked in Washington for some 50 years, Mr. Biden made his presidency a transition between the nation's older, racially calloused past and its softer, youthful, and more inclusive future.
We have shown each other and the world that there's no quit in America. None. The Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Biden appointed the first black woman to the Supreme Court.
Okay, here we go.
And signed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill into law.
Bravo.
However, a chaotic withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan, coupled with inflation concerns and doubts about his comparatively lenient border policies, yielded unrelenting low approval ratings. Throughout his bid for re-election, Biden fought hard and spent tens of millions of dollars just to try to stay tied in the polls with former President Trump.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
After what many in his campaign and top Democrats regarded as a disastrous first debate performance, Biden could not stop the erosion of support among lawmakers and top donors. After ignoring pressure to drop out for more than 3 weeks, Biden announced his exit from the race shortly after the Republican National Convention. Biden frequently embraced optimism for America, and at times it sounded like his own internal fight against those who bet against him.
We are the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. And let's stay together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Biden, in the end, was persuaded to preserve his legacy rather than risk defeat for himself and Democrats nationwide. Steeped in the hard realities of Washington, Biden learned that loyalty and power, even when you are president and the presumptive party nominee, can slip away when the political tides and those closest turn against you.
That was CBS's Major Garrett. Want to bring in Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. And even though the president is now not seeking a second term, he has a critical week ahead here in Washington, and yet he's still isolated at home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, battling COVID.
He is, but he is still the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the world, the most influential diplomatic power in the world. We know that his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was shifted a day later, now expected to happen Tuesday here in Washington. The vice president also expected to be present for that. All the national security team has been focused on trying to deliver in the next few days a 6-week ceasefire with the release of hostages to bring 5 Americans home, more than 100 hostages entirely, and have that be a rolling end to the war. This just shows you, though, how much time Joe Biden and his team have spent trying to break through on the foreign policy front. This is so important to him and his legacy, as he is now in these, as we know, final months trying to shape it. He wants to be able to deliver on this the same way that he can stand up there and say he expanded NATO when Vladimir Putin went and invaded Ukraine. So these are key legacy-making next few weeks for him. And Wednesday, we see that joint address to Congress by the Israeli Prime Minister.
The business of the presidency continues, and now a new person to lead the Democrats' campaign, and that effort underway by Kamala Harris to secure that nomination. Ahead, more on the vice president, as she has just been vaulted into history. We're going to take a look at her career trajectory from California politics to the vice presidency, and now the expected Democratic nominee for president.
When the engines failed on the plane I was flying, I knew what to do to save my passengers. But when my father sank into depression, I didn't know how to help him. When he ultimately shot himself, he left our family devastated. Don't let this happen to you. If you or a loved one is suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. No matter how hopeless or helpless you feel, with the right help, you can get well. CBS cares.
Here they are.
That was easy, see?
Seriously?
Hands out, please. Oh, hold on.
There are some places where devices just don't belong. Device-free dinner, a common sense idea from Common Sense Media.
For the millions suffering from long COVID, there is one urgent question.
How long?
How long? How long?
Until we solve long COVID. The Solve Long COVID initiative is bringing people together to find answers now. Go to solvelongcovid.org to learn more.
President Biden exits the race. Stay with CBS News for the latest.
You told us that alerting you to severe weather before it strikes is the most important thing we can do for you.
We heard you loud and clear.
That's why KINS 5 has weather impact alert days. We will alert you when severe weather is at its worst.
We'll explain the storm's impact
and let you know what you need to do to be safe.
Certainly a possibility for some isolated flooding.
Weather impact alert days from KINS 5.
On all our platforms, it's another way KINS 5 is watching out for San Antonio's zone.
Chevy lets you begin every day fully charged, so you can go farther. And so can your money. Tow with confidence. Plus, stay connected with available OnStar technology. For summer adventures, Chevy's got you.
Well-qualified buyers can get 1.9% financing on this 2024 Silverado. Or get $5,750 total cash allowance. That's 10% below MSRP. See your San Antonio Chevy dealers.
You're watching San Antonio's own KINS 5.
President Trump has attacked you frequently. He's called you a monster. He said you're nasty and it would be an insult to our country if you became the first female president. Do you see this as just the rough and tumble of politics, or do you view those attacks against you as racist?
Well, this is not the first time in my life I've been called names. And it was predictable, sadly.
Do you think the president is racist?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. You can look at a pattern that goes back to him questioning the identity of the first black president of the United States. You can look at Charlottesville, when there were peaceful protesters, and on the other side, neo-Nazis, and he talks about fine people on either side, calling Mexicans rapists and criminals. His first order of business was to institute a Muslim ban. It all speaks for itself.
Well, that was my 60 Minutes interview with then Senator Kamala Harris in October of 2020. She was elected to represent California in 2016 before joining then candidate Biden as his running mate. Ed Gordon, who interviewed the president this past week, now takes a closer look at Kamala Harris.
In 2003, underdog Kamala Harris won the district attorney election for the city of San Francisco.
Most important things don't come easy.
Her victory marked the start of a political career that certainly would not come easy. Kamala Devi Harris was born in 1964 in Oakland, California. Her mother, Shamala Gopalan, was from India, and her father, Donald Harris, from Jamaica.
I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me, including, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are.
She grew up in Berkeley, California, where her parents were both academics and activists who participated and raised their children within the civil rights movement. Harris graduated from Howard University in 1986.
I chaired the Economic Society. I was on the Howard debate team.
She then graduated from law school from the University of California, Hastings in 1989, and public service was her calling.
If you want to pass Proposition K, you're going to have the exact opposite effect.
After serving 7 years as the district attorney of San Francisco, in 2010, she was elected Attorney General for the state of California. She broke barriers as the first black and South Asian woman to hold the position, which she did for 6 years before she stepped into national politics.
Attorney General Kamala Harris just made it official. She is running for U.S. Senate.
We know this is the first open Senate seat we've had in almost a quarter of a century.
In 2016, she ran for Senate in California, and she won.
I intend to fight for truth and transparency and trust.
And it didn't take long for her fight to be felt in Washington, D.C.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that?
With her insistent inquiries and commitment to progressive policies, presidential buzz was quickly building around her, and she made it official in 2019.
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
Her announcement rally in Oakland drew nearly 20,000 people, and her campaign quickly gained momentum.
And those folks don't want a wall, they want a paycheck. So let's be clear about what should be the priorities of this administration.
Harris's most notable moment came during a primary debate with Joe Biden over his opposition to federally mandated busing.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
But her campaign soon began to stall. Her record as a prosecutor in California at times was at odds with the direction of the party. And before long, the momentum she had was gone.
It is with deep regret, but also with deep gratitude, that I am suspending our campaign today.
However, she would soon be on a new campaign.
I have no doubt that I picked the right person to join me as the next Vice President of the United States of America, and that's Senator Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris!
Just months after her own campaign fell apart, Kamala Harris was on the presidential ticket with Joe Biden.
I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America.
And in November of 2020, Joe Biden was elected the 46th president.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
With Kamala Harris making American history as the first female Black and South Asian vice president.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all.
In her role as vice president, she initially seemed to struggle to find her footing.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
At first, she was assigned the immigration crisis. But she found her voice when Roe versus Wade was overturned.
Today in America, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age live in a state with an abortion ban. Since Roe was overturned, I have met women who have had miscarriages in toilets because they were refused care.
And she has taken the message of reproductive rights throughout the country.
We trust women. And when Congress passes a law that restores the reproductive freedoms of Roe, our President, Joe Biden, will sign it.
And as the 2024 presidential campaign began to heat up, Vice President Harris stayed the course.
When you look at current polling, the front runner for a Republican nomination is the former president, the 45th president.
We will win re-election. We will win re-election. There is too much at stake, and the American people know it.
Even after President Biden's debate performance against former President Donald Trump, she stood by him.
Look, Joe Biden is our nominee. We beat Trump once, and we're going to beat him again.
And President Biden stood by her.
Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States.
But as President Biden drops out of the race, the focus is now on Vice President Harris. Will she be able to win the nomination and make history again?
And our thanks to Ed Gordon. Another prominent Democrat has endorsed Kamala Harris, California Governor Gavin Newsom. That is significant as now a number of Democratic governors have thrown their support behind the vice president. Now joining us is Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. He was Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016. Senator Kaine serves on both the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good to see you. And I do have to ask you, you have the unique position of having been on a ticket as a vice presidential candidate with a woman, Hillary Clinton. What advice do you have for Kamala Harris?
Well, be yourself. Kamala has made us proud as a senator in her earlier political service career and as vice president. This is not the circumstance she might have wished, but her Senate colleagues, including me, we have a lot of confidence in her, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that she and a great running mate are successful in November. The nation needs it to happen, and I'm going to do everything I can in Virginia to make it happen.
The president is isolated now, battling COVID. We are expected to hear from him sometime this week. But does Vice President Harris need to get out there? She's already getting attacked by Donald Trump. What would you advise your party to do?
The vice president does need to get out there, but that's nothing new. She has been a tireless road warrior for the Biden-Harris achievements, the Biden-Harris ticket. And as your segment pointed out, particularly in the aftermath of the horrible decision of the United States Supreme Court in Dobbs that President Trump celebrates and continue to celebrate, she's really come into the spotlight and done a great job of advancing the notion that American women should be able to make their own reproductive choices. So she'll be out there. And then we have to offer an amazing thank you to Joe Biden. I've been saying for weeks in Virginia that Joe Biden can always be counted on to do the patriotic thing. This is in the mode of George Washington or Teddy Roosevelt being able to run again, but recognizing that the needs of the nation made it better that he passed the torch to a new generation of leadership. Donald Trump's yesterday's news. Kamala Harris is today's and tomorrow's news, and we're going to do all we can to make sure she succeeds.
How will the vice president prosecute the case against Donald Trump?
It's interesting you mentioned that. Donald Trump has been convicted of a number of crimes and been convicted, including of crimes of sexual assault. And in Kamala Harris, you have a prosecutor who has prosecuted the perpetrators of sexual crimes, and she is a great prosecutor. And I think she's going to, make the case for the wonderful Biden-Harris record low unemployment, record low insurance rate, stock market up, manufacturing up, infrastructure up, linking arms with allies around the globe, battling to protect reproductive freedom. She is going to make the case that the path we've been on has been the right path, and the last thing we should do is hand the government back to a guy who tried to topple the peaceful transfer of power by inspiring a violent attack on the Capitol in January of 2021.
Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, who ran alongside Hillary Clinton in 2016. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
Ahead, how did we get to this unprecedented moment in American history? And what happens next? We'll be right back.
Even now, through it all, we are resilient, reaching out, sharing stories, safely helping, even from home. We will get through this together. And when we do, our communities, our country will need us more than ever. We are part of something bigger. We are Senior Corps.
James Brown and Bill Cowher welcoming you back to Dennis Melvin's house. It's time for the Midnight Snack Run.
This is one tricky obstacle course. Sticking to healthy habits in this kitchen is going to take focus and determination.
He's already entered the snack part of the course, and he's eyeballing a jar of chocolatey candy.
That is tempting right off the start.
He's reaching, Bill, but he pushes it away.
Great stiff arm.
He's approaching a plate of delicious-looking iced cookies.
Oh, Dennis, you only want one of those?
He blows right by him for the apple.
The fridge. It's make or break time, JB.
He stares down some rich-looking treats. Uh-oh, looks like he's headed for the soda. Wait, he jukes left, grabs the water bottle, and shuts the door with his elbow.
I gotta see that again.
Great move.
Now he's just gotta get out of there.
Look what dropped from the sky.
Don't do it, Dennis.
Bill, he somehow keeps moving.
That's the way you execute a midnight snack run.
Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer.
Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Parenting is hard. Technology can make it harder. The Family Media Plan developed by the American Academy of Pediatrics helps make it easier. Go to healthychildren.org/media plan today to create the media plan that's right for your family.
President Biden exits the race. Stay with CBS News for the latest.
If we were all the same, we'd only need one SUV. But what a boring world that would be. Individual SUVs for individuals. Imagine that. Get offers on select models at the Lexus Golden Opportunity sales event.
At Spectrum, we know that internet is a vital tool to help you fulfill your dreams.
My dream is to become a video game developer.
My dream is to get my online college degree. That's why Spectrum has affordable solutions to keep you connected. At Spectrum, we are committed to delivering reliable, affordable internet and unlimited mobile to keep you connected to what matters most to you.
There are trucks, and then there's the GMC Sierra, available with the connected driving experience and the world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra. It's the truck. Get over $2,700 purchase cash on select 2024 Sierra 1500 Denali models. Plus, current eligible GMC owners get an additional $2,500 purchase allowance. See your San Antonio area GMC